Hello there, welcome to Reloved Guitars, and here we have Jim's Harley Benton VT series strat style thingamajig. And and what did we do? We have some things to do. Now, this is an interesting guitar, right? I'll tell you why. That's a bit of tape glue. We'll have to get that off with some that stuff. Anyway, this is an interesting guitar because this is about the first Harley Benton that I've seen through here that is perfect in terms of playing action. First fret action actually is almost too low. Damn, that's oh, look at that. I would find that to be the case. Yeah, but it's nearly perfect. In terms of fret level, it's absolutely fine, which is incredible. So I played it a while trying to find some faults with it and couldn't find any. Really, well, certainly not in the action. Sorry, I'm just going to plug you in. Oh my goodness, can I get my hands to do this? Come on, do what you're supposed to do. Thank you. Something like that. Yeah, so had a play of it and really couldn't find fault with it. It's the nice vintage series strat style guitar that Harley Benton does, and it's a nice tremolo action. The only weak part about this guitar, really, the only faults I could find with it were the rattling loose strap button, and I suppose you could say the low weight zinc-alloy bridge, and the fact that there was quite a bit of rattle in the tremolo. So I had a good old play and couldn't find any frets that were high or choking out. Played it all the way through, and yeah, to my surprise it was playable. And on top of that, these Roswell pickups were quite nice sounding too. So yeah, you know, you've got the vintage style tuners on the back there, which are tidy enough, split post tuners. As I say, the nut is almost right, but it's practically touching. I mean, it's playable. You can just begin to hear it zing. So it's on the border of being too low. But yeah, surprisingly good. The frets are in great condition for a Harley Benton. So I kind of wondered if somebody had done something to this prior to it coming out of the factory, but this is apparently new, so it's this one has left the factory this way. Anyway, after a bit of discussion, what I realised is that Jim wouldn't be spending money on the fret leveling part of the setup. So with that money saved, there were a couple of things he told me. One of them is that he didn't like the sticking up screws here. They're too tall for the low action, and there's a little bit of action improvement we can still do on this, but so these are a bit tall and they stick into his hand, and he plays a lot of shadows style music. So with that in mind, and the fact that the Tremolo Arm has a not such a great feel to it, and the low mass bridge, I suggested, why didn't he look at replacing it with a full weight bridge and one of those Wilkinson push-in arms. So we bought a new bridge which has got a nice push-in arm with a little retainer hex key there, or grub screw I should say. So what we're going to do is we're going to change out this bridge completely for the new Wilkinson bridge, and it is a dependable quality, that bridge. I've just used one on my guitar. Nice solid block, something like 30, just under 30 quid I think this is. It's got a sort of plastic sleeve in there which makes the arm sit in. It's not perfect, but it's not too bad. And then once you get the arm sort of where you want it, you can tighten up a little bit, and it takes the most of the rattle out of it. In fact, you tighten it a bit more and it will take all of the rattle out of it. So it's a pretty good little unit, and it's not that expensive, considering that for that money you get a full weight steel block. Now, what we've bought separately from this is these little 6mm grub screws. So the purpose of that is we're going to take these little screws and we're going to change out all of the screws on here. So I will get probably my easier to use hex screwdriver thing, and the idea will be that we want to take these originals out and replace them with the short ones. So this is a very exciting little piece of activity here. Oh, where's that gone? There it is. So we literally just have to go and replace them all, and then we'll get back nice low grub screws, which won't stick into the palm of one's hand. So I figured that if you're playing a shadow style of music where the tremolo is central to it, and the rest of the guitar is in good shape, which, as I've mentioned, is a shock and quite unusual for the Harley Bentons. They're not bad, but this is the first one I've a long time that's been required absolutely no fretwork at all. But anyway, yeah, it seems to me that if everything else is pretty good and you're going to invest in the guitar, then if you're a Shadows Hank Marvin fan, then look at these are quite long. The shortest ones are about 8mm and the longest ones 10 or 12. Anyway, yes, you might as well invest in the bridge part of things. Now what I might do is I might borrow the 8mm ones out of this for the middle ones. We don't want these long ones, but we might go with the 8mm. We shall see. Anyway, so that's what we're going to do. So here's some fiddly stuff, and I know somebody will look at this and go, well, you may just expect me to watch you undoing grub screws. Why couldn't you have done that beforehand? Yada 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 yada. Had an interesting comment the other day from someone who watched a very old video of mine, and I think I spent some of the time in the video. Oops, hang on, I was going to change that for an 8mm. I spent some of the time in the video talking about some rude comments that somebody had left, and you know, that was right back in the kind of early days of starting to make videos of what I was doing. This was 2014, and the person commenting kind of assumed that he sort of judged it from his own perspective. So he said, you know, well, I don't see why you don't just block them and move on. And he said the fact that you're talking about it in this video kind of means that you're enjoying, I don't know, what did he say, playing God in your own little echo chamber or some crap like that. And actually, the truth about it, the reason I was talking about it, is back then in 2014, actually really negative comments I found very hurtful. You know, I didn't really know how to deal with it, or how not to let it affect me or take it too personally. So the fact that I was talking about it wasn't because I was enjoying censoring divergent opinions. I was talking about it because it was painful. And I know that lots of macho, tough guy people wouldn't talk about that. They would just, it'd be the last thing they would admit to, but I don't mind admitting to it. I found it depressing, actually. You know, I still do to this day. There's an element of it that depresses me, that people spend their time setting out to be unpleasant to other people. It seems to saying so alien to me. But there is a world full of people doing that. Seem to enjoy coming across as nasty and aggressive. I guess I'm glad that it's an alien world to me. Long may it remain so. I'd hate to be corrupted into it being normal. There you go. Anyway, so what we have here is, get these to actually bite the thread. We're nearly there with a replacement. Not bad. Can't remember what these were. They're about £6 or something for a set of these, or £3. I can't remember. I'll find out. But nice little improvement. I've done this on one of my own strats as well. It's very nice to have a low action, but without the grub screws sticking into your hands, which is usually what happens. Okay, so there's the screw replacement. I think the other thing I did, let me just get my head around this. The other thing I did on this, I'm doing on this guitar, is going to put tusk string trees, I think, on it. I think that was the plan. Let me just, I'll have to check. But anyway, we've got some here. Or was that the, no, actually, you know what, the string trees, tusk string trees were for a Pacifica. Actually, it's not for this guitar. I mean, I would recommend it, but I haven't checked it through. Maybe I'll just do it. We've got two on here, which are the little metal clips, butterfly clips, and they're not a nice quality. Okay, so to get on with this, let's put you up here so you're not falling over sideways. Now, looking at this nut, it really does feel that's too low, so I am actually going to have to replace that nut. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get ready to remove the tremolo, and we'll just get the other one lined up and sorted out, and then I guess it's a bridge replacement followed by a nut replacement, which is something I didn't actually plan on having to do, but I guess we have to do it. There's no point sticking with it if it's too low. So let me remove the back plate first. Very plasticky quality, but I mean, plastic is plastic, but it feels very brittle. I'm currently making one, trying to make one out of some laminate. It's down on the floor being clamped at the moment. On a custom build I'm doing, Nick, the customer, wanted a wood plate, but it has to be an exterior plate, and so if you look at that, it is 2mm, and you just can't get any timber that will go to that thickness and stay flat. It buckles all the time, so I'm having to try and make one out of laminate to try and get a wood finish. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this, I'm taking the strings down. The nut slots have been cut on this separate, so I don't know if somebody set this up in the factory, but you can see there's a, I don't know how well you can see, but behind the nut there's some marks where the nut files have just hit the edge of the extension of the fingerboard. It's quite common, and sometimes you can't cut a backward slope without doing that, but I think whoever's cut this has then ended up slightly overcutting the slots, so they're very, very low. Barely any space on this high E, which is a bit annoying. Now an alternative, an option on this would be to this plastic. We could put a little shim under this and just lift it up enough to clear. Just, you know, it's pretty well cut other than that, but that's I don't know, we'll worry about that later. So I want to just get all these strings off for the time being, and then stretch them out, and then we'll go in and make sure that the bridge is a good straight swap. I haven't done this recently on a Harley Benton. Can't remember if I've changed one before or not, but it'll be it'd be useful to see if it's a straight swap out. It should be. It's a 6-screw tremolo. There's no reason why it wouldn't be a straight swap. Just pulling these strings out a bit to try and make sure they come backwards out through the tremolo block. It's quite difficult to get them to go straight enough to work with, but yeah, I bet you this, I've gone and made out this is a simple job, but I bet this is going to turn into a bit of a nightmare in its own right. I think I was bamboozled a little bit by the nice condition of the frets, which I won't take that back. They are in good shape comparatively. We certainly played without any buzzing or choking, which is pretty rare for something with a nice low action. Okay, so first of all, I can just get all these strings out of the way. We'll get them off. Don't do it, don't get tangled up. This is the hard part about taking off strings. They always want to get caught. So we'll keep these as sacrificial strings for another day. I think I would just double check my brief notes, but I think we're going to go 10s on this for Jim. I'll double check that. I'll just pop in and double check the email in a minute. So let's just get the strings stored out of the way, out of trouble, out of harm's way. I've got an interesting clutch of guitars came in today. 4 brought by a long-time customer of mine called Hugh. So looking forward to, most of them are smallish jobs, but I'm looking forward to putting those on camera because they're an interesting mixture. There's an old West tone, a couple of old West tones, and there is split, a couple of old West tones, and what else is there? Oh yes, a Defil Cosmos, Polish made thing, wonderful old thing. So lots of interesting old beasts to work on. The Cosmos is in for a refret, so that's going to be interesting. Okay, so what we're going to do is to undo these. Put them off to one side. Nice looking guitar actually, all round. Just a bit, if there's anything downside about it, it's just a little bit plasticky, but plays great. That's the main thing. Okay, so that's a very, very light block. And oh, look at that, you don't know. See, you don't get to see that. Split the wood already, just in manufacturing. It's not too bad. It's fairly strong, but I mean it's basswood, but it's because there's a gap here. That's it's not even strong enough. That's out of the factory, which isn't absolutely ideal. I'm just going to have a little look under here to see, make sure this isn't any more serious than that. I mean, the hairline cracks, and it's common, but it's less common on a 6-screw tremolo. You do get to see it on the 2-point ones because there's a lot of loading on two individual points. Less common on a 6-screw. So nice finish though on the neck and the frets, and the pickups sound good. So you know, some of the most important bits already taken care of. Yeah, okay. Not too bad. You won't be able to see on the with that camera. We got decent quality pickups. Look, they're not ceramic magnets, they're Alnico magnets by the looks of it. Small pot, standard switch, and the cracking now that we see on here goes down here, down to about there, and similar on that one. So it's not substantial, but I'll take a couple of close-up pics because it's not absolutely ideal. Apart from that, routed for single coils and a humbucker at the bridge if you need it. Nothing else particularly striking about that. Let's move that out of the way. Get my phone. Yeah, it's just a little detail. I mean, it's a small thing, but it's, you know, I guess it's brand new or new from the factory, and you'd maybe, you know, you'd be, if you were being picky, you would be in your rights to say, you know, you want a replacement. But I mean, the amount of kind of hassle you would get for, or the amount of trouble to pack it all back up, stop doing what we're doing now, you know, get it back up to BIM and then onwards and stuff. It's for the amount of trouble that it really presents, it's probably not worth it. That's the other thing, is that packing tape really doesn't like this plastic. It leaves its glue on there very easily. And I think Jim put the Tremolo Arm against that, so note to self, I won't do that on the return journey. Okay, so, you know, we'll put it back together, and it's not major, but just worth noting, that's all. Okay. Okay, so we're going to change over from the light thing to this thing. Now that's interesting. Now we have a completely different spacing. Now that, who would have guessed that? So that's non-standard Harley Benton. Well, well, well. Well, that could be slightly to our advantage. Let me just double check the actual string spacing. Okay, the actual gauge or string spacing is the same. It's just the screw hole positioning that's different. Now, there's a couple of options here. Let's look at the overall width. The overall width is practically the same. I wonder whether we could just reuse this plate. I mean, the Wilkinson, no, then, because we lose the, do we lose, is that part of that? I'm just trying to think, because if we were to redo this, then we would basically replace this, we would fill these holes and re-drill them, and in some ways that, we could say that might strengthen anyway, stop the splitting. Let's just see where they would actually sit. Yeah, they would still sit practically on the same spot. We'd re-drill anyway, but it may go some way to securing those splits. The alternative, like I said, could be to, if that's separate from that, which I think it might well be. No, it's a smaller hole. Now we'll have to use that and fill and re-drill, which is kind of slightly unexpected, but it's not the end of the world. And there's a crack down here too. I'll take a picture of that. It's just, you know, not 100% terrific. Anyway, so that's an interesting thing. They're not straight swap outs. Let's try and get that good shot. Okay. So we've got basswood here, very light stuff. We can drill and fill and then remark up. Now what I'm just concerned about is with the extra weight thickness in the bridge, actually how far is that cut back? A little bit. We should get the same sort of movement out of it. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. To there, to there. On the mark. To there. No, we're not getting quite as much movement out of it because of the fact that it's a slightly bigger block on the back edge. What I might think of doing, just for fun, seems like a whole load of kerfuffle really, but let's just snip these off a minute. Okay, that's to one side. Right, give us a clear run at this. So we have more bulk on the back of this block, obviously. So what it does is it restricts the movement backwards, and ideally we'd want more than rather than less movement. Now we could technically reposition it. I don't want to end up cutting out more out the back here, which is an option, but it's a bit of a crude option. Another alternative is that we actually position it forward slightly of the original holes, and then we have more room, but that means that the saddles have to go back a little bit on the original position. So let's make a little mark so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. Forward might help strengthen the thing as well, strengthen those holes. Okay, there's the original. There is another kind of bridge that has some leeway, slightly oval shaped holes, which kind of allow you to, you probably would work with this. Have I got one here? No, everything is standard. Yeah, it probably allow you to do a direct replacement, but we'll see. We'll see. So we've got front and back, top E and low E intonation here, and then let's have a look if we were to move this forward to give us the amount of room we want for movement, which is there, and that would require that to go back to there, and if I can just hold it in place, this would have to go back to here. Let's just double check that. Assuming these are correctly intonated at the moment, I don't see a reason why they aren't. Okay, so okay, that's more like that, and that's more like, that's still that. Okay, so that's not a lot of room. Let's have a look. I'm just going to do a bit of realignment to see if we've got the room to do that, because if we've got the range of adjustment to do it, then it might be better to slightly reposition the holes anyway to give us more swing room for the tremolo operation. Okay, so we're going from there to, let's say, at the most, that's quite a long way along. Let's do this by hand, so it's a bit fiddly this. Let's do a mixture of both. Electronic for speed. Let's have a look. Okay, that's lined up to about there. And have we got enough room if we go from there? Yeah, probably. Right, let's do the others in sequence. Okay, that's one way of moving the position. Okay, there we are. We're on the mark there. That's where it used to be. Now, if we go to approximately to there, let's put a piece of tape on here. Okay, so that's as far as it will go. That's in the middle, right? That's as far as it will go. That's its furthest extent, which will give us a ton of movement. That's the original position. If I can just make sure it's straight. There's hardly any distance between the two, really. I mean, we're talking that much, but with the additional block, it would be quite good to go somewhere in between. Is that enough? It's hard to tell. It's not as much as the other one. That's the full whack. It's half. Of course, we go right to the edge and it's nowhere near enough. So let's go half and half. Let's see what half and half looks like. It's not very half and halfy. Right to there. Okay, and then middle point there and there. That's quite a lot. Not quite as much as that, but does the other one even go that far? That's right to its edge. Back there, back there, back there. No, see, that really doesn't go all that far either. It's just we don't want it to get in the way. Actually, there's a number of ways you could get around it by filing the block down a little bit, just on the back edge there. That's another way around it. But okay. So the other thing to just check on this thing before we do anything is with the whole thing in place. Right, well, that's not sitting down properly. Okay, so there is, at the moment, to move that forward to there, I would need to remove a little bit of, just trim that a little bit. Is it worth? Yeah, no, hang on, that's a ton of room. Okay, which line are we going? We're going to that second line. That's good. That works. Okay. So the first thing to do to get this all working is to drill these out and replace them with What are they? Oh, we could do 4mm, I suppose. Are they 4mm? They're probably a bit less than 4, but let's go 4. 4. We could do it on there. Let's see if it's easier, better to do it on there. Well, what started out as simple is turning out to be not as simple. But I'm not surprised, because these things never turn out as simple as you think. So I'm just going to put you up here on that angling that thing. You should be able to see all round, and then see if we can just get that up there. Can we reach everything? But we can't. That's an interesting thing. We have to do this by hand, ain't we? We are. So what's the way? Okay, do it by hand. For a minute, or that, keep that there. Me, a clamp. Just to hold it, stop it spinning round. Very powdery wood. Okay, so there we have a bit done, and we get some glue. Some of this, aka dowel. Nice, perfect fitting. We need 6 bits of it, so let's get 6 bits. Keep your fingers out of it, it usually helps. 5, 6. And what I'm going to do, like I said, there you are. What began as a simple task becomes complicated. Like I said, could have got another, or waited, or ordered another bridge, but this is a decent enough way of doing it, particularly since there are already those cracks, which this will stabilise, because the glue and the wood will kind of lock the crack in the middle, which is quite useful. So I'm just squaring off the ends of these a little bit, and then what I'll do is I'm just going to very slightly taper the ends, so we've got a start point, only a little bit. And then what I'll do after that is we'll do a little thing I do, as I'm going to put a stripe down the side of a little groove down the side of the thing, the dowel, so that if needs be, any glue can come out the side, like a little channel for it to escape, so it doesn't form a vacuum, or air can get out, I should say, probably more likely. So this is called, this dowel is a hardwood dowel, but it's as hard as, equally as hard as the basswood, probably harder. So that's the rounded bits, and then it's hard to see this, but I'm just going to grab. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to grab and put a dent, a little channel down the side, so that it's at least as long as the dowel is going to go into the hole, and then it's just a little channel for the air to come up through, so it doesn't form a vacuum, bounce back. Yeah, so that's going to have to go in. We don't have to wait for it to set, actually. We can re-drill pretty much straight on top of it once we mark up where we want it to go. And in order to mark it correctly, I'm going to need to use the strings again, or two of them anyway. This is going off track there, off target. Right, there's my so to help things along, I tend to get some glue in there first, this way. So the spacing wise, I could just take the center of these holes as the start point, or I could go the extra bit and line up the bridge, the new bridge, and just be absolutely sure that the strings line where I want them to go, because I don't want to run any risk of it being even a millimetre off. It's critical. Okay, so then I tend to get the thing, put a bit of glue on it, and then tap it home. Probably a bit soft, it could do with plastic hammer. Take that off now. And so on and so on. Now this will clean up. We'll cut these off and snip them off and clean them up. You can feel when they hit the bottom of the travel. It's important that they're the same size, 4mm. We don't want them kind of stressing the wood out and splitting it or anything like that. Obviously there's glue in there as well, which fills up the space, but okay, so that's that. Like I said, we started out simple, then not so simple. Now I'm going to get start with, no, I'll get something else. I will get my fret cutters, and we can go in here and snip those off just above the wood. Shoots them out and hits the fingers. and then clean those off. So what we've got is our 6 dowels fitted. I did buy a special saw for cutting back flat, but it's not ideal for this now. This would be better done with a sharp blade to just cut this back to flush. It doesn't have to be perfect because this is underneath the bridge anyway. But we'll either chisel it flat or knife fit flat. If you're ever worried about protecting the kind of paintwork before you cut something with a chisel or a blade, you can put a bit of a safety thing on it. Now this here is, obviously you've got to get get it flat on there if you can. It's actually difficult to do with this. Alternative is to get your blade. The blades tend to be actually easier to use because you can bend them. This is quite a big dowel. It's easy with matchsticks. No, toothpicks is the standard sort of stuff. Well, that's made that harder. Right, let's get the last of our spare blades. Note to self, goes down to Travis Perkins, get some more. And then basically we just use the blade to trim back. These are a bit flimsy, so this could take longer than normal, but you'll do it. The sharper they are, the better they go. So we get a nice clean cut back to flush without cutting your own hands off in the process. Again, that tape just helps protect the paintwork in the run-up of the blade, but it's quite easy to use the blade. Having a little bit of a curve on it as well helps to make it focus just in one spot, so you're not scraping too wide an area. And once you've got the bulk of the dowel that's sticking up done, you can remove that protection bit and then come in again and just tidy up. Now, this only needs to be roughly flush. I mean, we're not going to paint it, it's not visible. It's just a filler to secure the material to make it solid again. And the glue will go off and set overnight. So there we are, that's that little modification done. Now what we'd ideally do is put this out of the way. Get that out of the way. Now, first thing probably makes sense to do is we want to get a couple of strings on the bridge to test the lineup. So I'm going to use. Am I going to use the one now? I could use the ones we already had, but you know what? They'll be hellish to thread through. So I'm going to use a couple of spare strings, courtesy of Simon, who always is a great supplier of my spare strings. So I'm just going to use. I don't mind what they are really. One's bare, one it's a G, but it will do for the E position at this point in time. But I'm just using these because they've got straight ends, so they'll be easy to thread through. And I probably should have said, here's a little tutorial on moving a bridge or installing a new bridge, but I didn't. I thought it was going to be simple. Bloody idiot. Anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that's the E string, high E, and I'm going to put that up through there, and I'm going to put this one up through here. That's quite close to the back edge, so for intonation purposes, it's not a lot of spare room for it to travel. Okay, so there's our strings. Now I'm down at this end. I'm going to actually re-borrow the nut for this purposes. Can I borrow you again, nut? Thank you. I'm also going to cut the excess off here and fold it into the what do they call that thing? A split post tuner, I called it. And I'm going to just do it up a bit, and then I'm going to capo it for a second while I get this other string ready. And again, just cut that, trim that a bit to length, and then wind that on, and the split post tuner at the other end. Now we've got two guide strings, and their only purpose at this point in time is as guide indicators to where I want this to sit. Now I'm going to just remove, sorry, that's all done up tight. I've removed the capo which I was using to hold the strings in place, and I'm just now tightening up. So we're now using the strings as guides, if you like. So I'm going to put them under tension, and they're going to start to pull the bridge towards the neck. Now obviously they're out of place there. So what I'm looking for is I want to come forward to my kind of mark on here, but I want to do it in such a way that this alignment here is perfect. So checking on the nut, looks good down there, and the alignment is good here. Alright, and so what I can do at this point, if I can just hold that all in the right place, I can find my pen and I can mark the new points, the new holes all the way through, and they're kind of difficult to get to because there's a string in the way at either end. I'm just trying to keep that in the same place. Okay, so there's my marks for new positions, and that gives me a fair bit of movement, and that means if I do it from that position there and line that up again, then my start and finish points are there and there for correct intonation. It's a little further back than I'd like probably, but it'll work, and it means we don't have to cut any further material out of the bridge. These, I mean, the thing about this is these guitars weren't built for a heavier block. It's as simple as that. They were made for a little thin zinc-alloy block, which is fine as an operating thing. It plays really well. However, they eventually do crumble. It's almost inevitable. They give up the ghost eventually. So just looking at, I'm just rechecking the position of these strings. Okay, oh, that's fallen off there, that's why. Okay, yeah, that's dead on, that's spot on positioning. Okay, so that's the positioning, and you can see that we're slightly a bit forward, and we're obviously the holes spread out a little bit from the originals because they're a wider spacing. So then we have a central center point of each marked circle. Done by eye. There's my start point, and then we can then drill guide holes. Now that's all I'm saying is that is a slightly different position in terms of the, there's a little bit of room for intonation still there. But let's just double check it against the original intonation, which we had there, there and there, and furthest back was there. Okay, quite a way back anyway. It isn't that much further back. Yeah, okay, overall. Yep, okay. So there you go. So that's our new position. And what I would then do is I would mark it with a sharp object like this, which is a really good start point. And that one's right down the middle, down the edge of the hole. So having made a sort of start mark, we can then measure up for our screws, get a gauge of the size that we need for the pilot screws. So we have 3.5, so we want a 3mm, these are the new ones, yeah, those are the old ones. We'll go for 3mm screw. No, drill bit is the word. It's quite soft wood, so you might, you could say, well, we could go for 2.5mm, but still what I don't want to have happen is for it to split the wood or do anything like that. So I would still play it safe with a 3mm pilot on a 3.5mm thread. Okay, so just one thing, let's start. Let's get a start point right on the mark. Right on the mark. That one looks right on the mark, that one does too. And so does that one. So I'm picking the 3 straight away that I feel are well centered. Because getting these dead right is really important. Let's just double check this, that it is the 3, 297. Okay, so which is the good ones? Which are the good ones? That one's a good one. Let's just check it now before we go any further. That one. Feels like it goes in very nicely. Okay, so while we're at it, we could drill the next one straight in there. Yep. Okay, let's see how it's sitting. That's on the line there. Get sawdust in the eyes there. Come on. The important thing is when you're repositioning or replacing tremolo screws like this is if you need them to be loose, if you don't, we're not tightening them down, but even as they're going in like this, you don't want them tightening up because that will stop the tremolo moving. So the positioning, the exact positioning of these pilot holes are really important. Really important. Again, good and loose, that's what we want. We want it to feel as loose as that. Okay. So 2 more to drill, pilot holes to drill. Okay, I'll just put these in and then I'll take them out and we'll clean up the tape and everything. Okie dokie. Right, now we'll take them out again. So an alternative to this movement, slight movement forward, would be one of 2 things. Either you rout or chisel out some more space in the back, which is a bit of a bigger operation, or you could carve off, file off a little bit of the bulk of the bridge at the back, just to allow a bit more clearance. There we go. So I've taken the sort of simpler option, which is to just move the bridge screws forward a fraction. Since we had to drill some more anyway because they're a different spacing from the replacement bridge. There we go. Right, so the other thing that matters is the positioning of the tremolo, the pick guard. So hopefully, I'll put this back in. This is difficult to get these. This is going to be tricky to get these through here. Right. Yeah, when we put the plate back on, what we want to make sure is that we don't need to, or see if we need to trim any off the plate to get it to work. This is annoyingly fiddly. I need pincers for hands, really. Come on, through you go, and through you go. So this is the jack wires coming through, and the tremolo claw ground wire coming through. Just make sure all those sit in the right place. Take these off a minute, thank you. Okay, that's sitting up on something, a bit of wire sticking up somewhere. Thank you. Okay, so the thing I want to check is, just put that on there, and have we got room to move without, yep, we don't need any more alteration on that, that's good. So we go back to the lightest gauge of torque on here, and we'll put these all on, and then we'll be ready. Again, torque set to 1, we don't want to drive these in very hard because they'll all too easily strip the basswood. Okay. So I guess we'll do a replacement or a shim on that nut. see what we've got. I mean, a shim is easy enough, but since it's plastic, I'm tempted to go better and improve it. Right, now we'll up the torque a little bit here, and we'll now refit these. Before I do that, I'm just going to do as much of a clean up as I can. Put them all in first. Right, they're not all the way down yet. We want the freedom of movement. I keep enjoying saying that. Now, there's no reason to swap over the claw arrangement. This is just a perfectly good arrangement. So let's go three screws. 3 screws. Where's my... Right, where have they gone? There they've gone. 3 screws. Okay, let's just take a look at this. It's just on the edge of being too tall. That's the other downside. Thinner bodies. Oh, seems like a full-size body, but just check this out. Okay, fits on there. Just fits on there. We'll see how it goes. Out of the way. Okay, so now we have our tremolo in place, dust removed, we have our arm dropped in. Is that the correct arm? Yep, arm dropped in, and that's just rubbing against the, what is it? Let's check, let's do these up correctly. And then we'll see. Okay, down we go. And down we go. Okay, that's nice. Let's check is that see, no, it's just perfectly fitted. We've got a kind of fraction, a bit more room on this side than the other, but I think that was probably the same, unless I'm mistaken. It was the same on the other one, so no difference there. There we go. Nice. Now in the back here we could adjust tremolo arm if we can get in the back from here, which we can, so we can basically get under there and adjust it. Now currently it's feeling quite stiff, but we haven't got strings on or anything yet, so that's completely different. So that's fitted in its new position, or its new bridge in slightly new position. So I'm going to put it out of the way. I'm going to tidy up now because we've got a whole lot of stuff in the way, and I'm going to put the spares and everything back in here, so I know what's what. That's a spare too, that's a spare, those are spares, those claws are spares, claw screws, that's a spare, those are spares, and that's a spare, the original. Okay, so we know where we are with that. Those are to be used, that's to be used. So we'll put this out of the way for now. Get rid of that, and we'll tidy up. Throw things away, clear things up, and I'll see you in a minute when we're ready for the next bit, which will be fitting a new nut, I think. See you in a sec. Oh God, just put the news on and it's general election.
There will be a question, and this is something I'm going to float something early with you, and be prepared that this may not turn to be true, or this may not be the way that it turn out.
Really? Must we?
If Jeremy Corbyn doesn't support this election, then there is a question mark over then what happens next, whether there is then a subsequent vote of no confidence in the government, because it seems that there will be a moment of paralysis.
Moment of paralysis, eh?
There will be a moment of paralysis in Boris Johnson's government, and whether he can actually, because if there's going to be there is going to be a risk.
I don't think. Can you get copyright strikes for putting on news? I don't know. You just can't be bothered to stop it at the moment because I've only just heard this fabulous piece of news. So.
We might have a prime minister in this country. There might be all sorts of negotiations. Because the coalition negotiations lasted 5 days in 2010. So Boris Johnson needs Labour. But if you add Labour and the Liberal Democrats together, you put the two together.
What is going on?
And Jo Swinson, the Liberal Democrat leader, while she's ruled out, correctly on this, she's ruled out a pact beforehand. What she hasn't done, what the Liberal Democrats haven't done, is rule out going into a coalition with Labour if there is. That wouldn't be with Jeremy Corbyn. And the condition there would be that Jeremy Corbyn would have to go.
Why is it so complicated? I mean, why has it become like such a game?
For a second referendum, whether Jo Swinson would then be prepared to do a deal with Jeremy Corbyn. But
this is just the crappiest
But that was what
pair
was
of
so key
hands
about John
I've ever
McDonnell
seen.
when he spoke to you up in Edinburgh, wasn't it? Because John McDonnell said, well, we won't stand in the way of the second independence referendum. That immediately buys Labour, 35, probably more SNP seats. We could continue chatting and just be around for the rest of the hour, but we do have some guests that we need to get to. So you can go home now. Thank you very much indeed. That's Leo Rushwood, our political editor. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to Dan Hannan, MEP, and Sir Malcolm Rifkin to get their reaction to it. It's 19 minutes past 7.
This is LBC.
Feeling peckish? Introducing the Snack Geolocator Slingshot.
Come on through there, would you please?
Pull on your horn,
I will turn this off in a minute, I
for the
promise.
yummy goodness to find your exact location.
Oh yeah, the snack geolocator slingshot will never happen. But with a new BP Me Rewards card, getting more of the snacks you love more often will. Search BP Me Rewards to find out more. BP, every day. Bright.
We can't get your online shopping delivered right away. We can't make your kettle boil any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your accounts all within minutes.
Yeah.
So you can spend less
So there we
time
go.
at home and more time enjoying it.
Can enjoy finding out about that later. So that's what they've decided. Government has decided to have an election, but I better not talk about it because I get demonetised because it's a traumatic event or something that YouTube doesn't like people talking about. Is it traumatic? I don't know, some sort of whatever the word they have, difficult national distressing event or something. I think that's bleeding distressing, don't you? Anyway, that's only if you're a UK viewer. If you're overseas, the carry on of the British government and peoples is probably just embarrassingly amusing, or a distraction at best. Who knows? Anyway, I'm just going to solder down the tremolo bridge ground to the tremolo claw. I can just get it to stay on. Thank you. Okay, those are those, that's that. Right. Now this will, at this point, just fit on, but whether it will do any moving as it comes, so no, it's going to go up, should be right. Now I've just, while I was at it, I've just replaced the nut with a bone one, which is perfect fit in that direction, but it'll need a little bit of cutting down. Yeah, good fit, actually did spot on. So let's get rid of the electrical stuff, because we don't need that anymore. Off, away, 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 away. Yeah, so we've gone from bone, plastic to bone, and the reason I couldn't live with that other one in there is it simply was too close to the first fret. It's not good. It would cause buzzing, and all it takes actually is the tiniest amount of change in the neck relief due to temperature, weather, or some little atmospheric variation, and you've got yourself a buzzing, sitaring E string on the first fret. And again, that's how it came out the factory. Not ideal, but it seems like it did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at reusing the strings, only for the purpose of cutting the nut slots. Now this, in a way, this is a bit of a painstaking task. Where's this? No, right. I have lost the pliers, so they must have dropped down somewhere. Brilliant. Anyway, God knows where they are. Yeah, so the thing about reusing strings like this to do things on a Strat is that it's all very nice to think about reusing them, but the problem is getting them straight enough to go back through the tremolo block to reuse, and it's just about doable on the thicker strings, but by the time you get to the top strings you're going to struggle. One is going to struggle. I'm going to struggle. Anyway, so it's a bit time consuming, but I'd rather use the original strings to move around and cut the nut slot than to put new ones, the final strings in, and do it using those, because it just stresses them. I also, by the way, got to just tighten that up and make sure that there's nothing wrong with the thread, as that may need recutting. Have I just put the wrong? Yeah, I've just put the wrong string in the wrong hole. And I also will zip inside in a minute and check the gauge strings. It's probably 10s, I think he said. Anyway, but I don't know. These feel like 10s, probably. So yeah, it's interesting with this Harley Benton that top marks for Harley Benton for getting the frets right. If this is not, if this has come straight from the Thomann factory or the Chinese manufacturer, they've done a good job on the frets. They're really good condition, and they are surprisingly accurate without any need for fret leveling that I could found straight away. So that's a good thing, and it is unusual in my experience, so worth kind of remarking on, really. Now, when you get down to thinner strings on these, sometimes you get to a place where you just have to admit you can't actually get the top E through. You just can't get it straight enough to go through. What I've got is some of that shrink tubing, because sometimes if you can get it just straight enough to get into the tubing, you can use the tubing to push through and come out the other side, and that becomes a sort of a jacket, if you like, to a sleeve for the otherwise slightly crumpled string. But it's a bit of a pain, but hey. Okay. So it's, like everything so far on this guitar, it's a slow process, but we'll get there. Now there is a little bit more intonation room, should we need it, on these saddles on the ones I've set in this bridge. But I based it on the original from the factory, which is no guarantee that would have been intonated, but I'm sure it would have been close. I didn't probably made a mistake of not checking it first, just to be absolutely certain about that, because that would have, if, say for example, it had required the strings to go further back in order to intonate them, and had it suggested to me that it wouldn't have been a good idea to do this moving forward of the new bridge, then I would have made a decision to make some cutaway, or cut some new space away inside the cutout on the back here, as another way of, you know, achieving what we needed. But it was you know, it was one swings and roundabouts, and the last thing I suppose you want to do is scrape away, file off the expensive steel bridge. Well, it's not that expensive, but you kind of don't want to be throwing that away as metal filings when you've paid for it, so probably the best bet to sort of leave that as a last resort. But I've done it before, and you know, it's perfectly doable, and it doesn't do any harm. It doesn't affect how the guitar plays or anything. It just creates that little bit of room that you needed. These are not very good pliers for this straightening business, but if we can get this through, I can't bother. It's the next one's probably going to be harder. Yeah, we're through with this one. And finally, this nigh on impossible thing, but right, we'll try and straighten it out, and then if not, we'll put it through the little tube. But there's very little grip. That's why I used the other ones when I haven't lost them. Ah, there they are. Thank you so much. Knew they had to be around somewhere. Right, so in getting these straightened out, you tend to get lots of little crimps in them. It's about the only way you can do it. And then a way to do this, if you can, is to push it through there. Again, if it's too bent, you might still not get it through. And of course, there has to be enough room for it to come through the other side like that. Hey, pull it through. I think that will do. Hey, out you come. There you go. So that's a neat little get out of jail trick. Right, so we'll go back to the thank you. Go back to the beginning. We don't need all this extra wire on here, so I'm going to snip some of this back just to make winding things on simpler. Like that. Now this is just for the purpose of sorting this nut out. Now I'm assuming, by the way, that it's tall enough. It did appear, yeah, to be quite a bit taller than, no, it did appear to be taller than the original, so that's going to be fine. So it's interesting to see marks on the nut which suggest that it's been hand done in the factory to a certain setting, although it's clearly too much now, hence the need for another one. But still, positive sign of taking care about something, which it isn't something I've noticed before. Actually, on some of the top of the range Harley Benton Les Pauls, Les Paul copies I should say, sorry, they do put tusk nuts on, and you can see that they've gone to some trouble to shape them. So there is clearly some effort going into that sort of aspect of the setup. So that's a good sign too. I mean, it's, you know, if you could just get that bit right, you transform a brand that would otherwise be known for, well, it's sort of quite good for people who maybe don't expect any better, you know, and they look cheap to begin with, but then, you know, by the time you have to set them up or pay to get them set up, and you can go from that to just being blinding value by finding a way in your production process or your manufacturing process to get these little details absolutely spot on, you know, and finding a way to make it cost effective to get the first fret action right is a brilliant thing, including whatever they've done here to get the frets right. Seems to be a bit of a change actually for Harley Benton, but a good one. Okay, so we've got a load of room here now. How high the strings are way up, but the spacing of everything's good. A fraction more room on the tiny, infinitesimal, a bit more room on the treble side, which I'm always happier with. Okay, so I want this up at pitch really for now. Close to. Oh, that's too many times bent. Oh, that's the price you pay for stretching or straightening out old strings. Luckily I've got some spares, so I won't mess about with another old one. I'll just completely replace this one straight off. Yeah, better than farting about. Sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. So this is a replacement will do for doing the strings. Actually, you know what, that's not a 9, is it? That's a 10, I think. Just put that back out of the way. So this is proving to be a fiddly thing. Hold on. Right, come on. Yes, so I got a sudden influx of 4 very different guitars this week on top of the things I already had on, so I'm going to get 3 of them with the simpler jobs done, which are mostly nuts, pickup changes, a couple of simple things, and then the longer term or the slightly more complex one is the Cosmos refret and tweaking, so that's going to be take a bit longer. But it's a good variety of things, and hopefully I can get most of that done. I'm going to visit my ma at the weekend, and also be able to use her broadband and upload my outstanding video collection, which will be good. Get some fresh content up there. Right, just check this isn't pulling up at the back yet. No, so the springs are still overpowering the strings for now. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to set the action at the bridge again, because since last time I looked at this guitar, obviously we've changed the bridge and we've changed the saddles too. So I'm going to need to reset the action, which currently is way too low. Oh, too low, not way too low, but too low. So I'm going to set that. Get the right way around, get this right, and then I'll take care of the nut slots. Okay, 1.5, that's good. So let's do the rest of this by eye for a minute. This. It's quite a flat radius, or relatively flat radius on this guitar, so we shouldn't end up too much difference down here, but I'm just going to set them by eye to begin with. Right on its little stilts down there. And I'll go back and sort of check them individually, one by one. Make small adjustments. Okay, So let's put these on, get a clear look at the readings. Okay, that's too high now. Oh, that's because this is now pulling up. Let's do something that helps by screw this in and don't. Thank you. Stay. Okay, so we could add an extra spring, but I tend to like to work with 3 springs and have the claw in further than out. You go with more springs. We'll see if the claw screws doesn't pull it down, then I will add another one and then we'll slack off on the claw springs. That looks about okay for now. So let's go back to tune. Okay, back to cathode for a minute. Back to the action at this end, and we're looking at 1.5 fractionally over, down a bit, looking good. Right, tiny fraction up. Good. This one fraction down. That's my stepson laughing like a hyena. Down a bit. I'm going to come to about 1.25 now on this string. We're going across from 1.5 across to about 1.2. Okay, that's good. Not too high. Okay. And a little bit further up. Good. Down a bit. 1.2, 1.2-ish. Okay. That's that adjusted. I'm going to get the pitch right again, give it all a bit of a stretch. Not too hard because I don't want them breaking. Okay, so now we've got the action at that end we want. We've got the spring pressure good. It's holding the tremolo down while the guitar's at tune, at pitch. Now we've got to work on the first fret action, and we're working with bone, which is dependable, although it can take a while to cut. So you can see the gaps here are pretty high. The nut at this point in time is not it's not seated completely flat. Now this sorry, it's not glued in yet. It is flat, but it's not fully glued in. Now it's probably, since I can see that it fits and it's all in good order, I think I'm going to glue it in now, so that when we do the cutting, any cutting, we're not going to end up with any surprises with the nut trying to sit further down later on. So I'm going to just, I probably need to slack these off, which I didn't want to do, but we'll get this nut out and we'll glue it in. It's all in good shape, no bits sticking up, the bottom is flat. Get the glue, get the little cocktail stick for dispensing of the glue. Get this bit off, which keeps the glue a bit longer, keeps it fresh a bit longer, otherwise it turns into this strange sticky monster that climbs out of the pot. It's very bizarre, but it does. Okay, so want to get this into the slot without hitting anywhere else. Get that out of the way, get this in, and pretty much get it bang on first time, because we don't have any real adjustment room time, and this is always the difficult bit, getting it. I've got a bit of movement time if we can do it. There we go. That's looking good. Right, squeeze it down. Right, then get it back under pressure. Glue it. Okay, that's the nut glued in. Press down under pressure. Right, dum 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 ba ba dum dum. Now the next bit, we are going to cut the slots. So for this job, I'm going to use a number of tools. The first one, second one, third one. Where have they gone? I'm going to use a couple of different V-notch files, and I'm going to use any one of the series of thingy files, nut files. I'm going to move this off to the side, and I'm going to start with this side first, and I'm going to go and cut down until I get down to the very close to the height I want, which is 0.3 millimeters action over the first fret. So I'm going to use this file. It's very good at taking down a lot of material, and I keep taking it down, making sure it's bending backwards, or leaning backwards, sorry, to give a slope, a backward slope, which is what we want ideally. And it's going to look like a bit of a shark's tooth, snaggly tooth thing here. It's kind of the way it goes. The reason it's worth doing is because getting the first fret action right is an absolute revelation to how it changes how your guitar not only plays but also plays in tune. Something that actually often it won't do if you have too high first fret action, because a too high first fret action makes your strings notes go sharp when you fret notes down near the nut, and amazingly that can be anything. I found anything above 0.5, half a millimeter or above, and those notes go sharp. And when they go sharp, it makes your open chords sound awful and can drive people absolutely mad, because they don't know why the guitar is playing so badly, or it seems it's playing so badly. It seems like they just cannot get it in tune. That's the way people describe it, and how I would have described it when I first had that problem. Perfect. So when you figure that, when you realise that having a too high first fret action causes not only your notes that played near the nut to go out of tune, go sharp, it also causes it also makes the guitar much harder to play. It feels much more tiring to play down near the nut. So getting it right improves how the guitar feels to play. It becomes much easier to play. It makes the notes near the nut stay in tune, play in tune when you fret them. And the other thing it does is, in the process of getting the action right, so long as you make sure that the nut slots are well cut and free running, what you end up doing is you end up taking away the friction, or the kind of roughness that causes friction in the nut slots, and by cutting them correctly, you ensure that your strings pass smoothly through the nut slots, and that actually is about 50% of any guitar's tuning issues taken care of right there. And it's something that a lot of people don't realise and underestimate the importance of that. and they think it, you know, think it's all kind of mysterious things like the tuners or the string angles through the nut. This one is got a bit sticky now. My special custom made thing is getting a bit hard to use. Yeah, so you know, people attribute tuning instability to all manner of things, almost none of which are what's responsible. And what is responsible is the friction on the nut slots, and the other component is unreleased slack in your strings, and you'll see me working to take care of that when we put new strings on this guitar. I will spend quite a bit of time stretching them out, and once we've got the nut slots right and stretched out the strings, then this thing will stay and play in tune, even to the point where you can operate the tremolo quite a lot without it going out of tune, which a lot of people don't think is possible with a budget style Strat. Actually, a lot of people don't think it's possible with an expensive Strat. They just, you know, you tend to find people who just lock down the tremolo and that's it. They won't touch it again. But here, I like to get it so that the tremolo works and works well. So what I'm doing, as you can see, is I'm using the V-notch files, the jeweler's files, to cut down, sort of remove quite a lot of material in one go. And I'm cutting the slots is a bit of a notch down to close to 0.3 millimeters gap between the first fret and the string. And when I get down to close to that height, then I will switch to using the Japanese nut file. Now this there's a little, no, is there a gap? No, I was going to say there's a tiny gap there, but it's actually not. It's just it looks like it from here because it's slightly hung over. Yeah, so I use the Japanese nut files to round out the bottom of the slot, basically. So I get down to here and I'll do the last bit with that file, and that makes sure that it's the right, the bottom of the slot has the sort of correct profile for the string. Feels good. Right, and then I switch around. Drop these out. And work outwards from this. Now they're nice and low now, but they're no danger of hitting the first fret, which they were before. So work out from the G outwards. Now you get these quite deep notches as a result of cutting the slots accurately like this. A lot of people have said in the past, why don't you leave the notches or leave the slots as they are, but cut the thing to size by working upwards, working from the bottom of the nut upwards. And I can tell you from experience that is so difficult to get to the exact clearances. If you try doing it that way, my experience has always been you will 9 times out of 10 overcut it and have to chuck it away or shim it and start again, or some horrible, you know, get out of jail solution. It just doesn't make sense. So I always do it downwards from the top, and then if it looks snaggly and people really don't like the way that it looks, then you can actually reduce the excess nut material with a file anyway. Once this bit's done, and then it'll look a lot tidier and a lot more restrained, shall we say. But actually the fact that it looks a bit like, you know, the Siegfried line is completely irrelevant. It doesn't have any effect on how it plays. It's just an aesthetic thing. So, and some people don't like the look of it. So, with a nod to, you know, aesthetics, I will always take care of that. Just file it down basically between jobs, or once I've done this part of it. And typically would be getting ready to polish out the frets, which I don't need to do on this because they're in good condition. There we are on the mark. So these, remember, these are the original strings, or sacrificial strings as I call them. We'll put a new set on for the end of the job, and that will be it. Check the intonation in a minute, make sure that all works given the movement of the bridge positioning slightly. So as I say, using these cheap jeweler's files to move lots of nut material quickly down to where we want to get to, and then precise bottoming out with the nut file. And again, these are all starting to basically these are these very thin delicate nut files jammed, glued between double-sided sticky tape between two old blades, to make a bit of a strengthening, kind of stiffening device, which has helped keep them in good shape for quite a long time. But it looks like the glue of the adhesive on the double-sided sticky tape is giving up the ghost, and so they're starting to move around, which is not ideal. We're very close on this one. It's playing hard to get for the last little bit, and it's sort of in that zone where you don't want to over cut it. That's it. Still a bit more. It's stopped. It's not cutting down, it's kind of gone mushy almost. Nearly there. I think that's good enough. It's kind of knowing when to stop is also one of the skills of this. Okay, and again, cut down out, get rid of the bulk of the material. And then keep checking, keep checking. Final nut file. And we're down to the right mark. Perfect. There we have it. So that's that done with the sacrificial springs. Hurrah. Let's just get this checked so and make sure this is working, because I don't like the fact that this is loose. Yep, that's good. Okay. So that's done. Now we can get rid of these strings, and then I'll do a little bit of filing on the nut just to get rid of the excess material. We have to be careful not to go too low, because we don't want to. You can overdo it and then end up with too shallow slots, and that equally doesn't work. But once I've done this, I'll. Damn, I was going to check the intonation, but it's too late. I'll do it on the final strings. It's probably better to do it. I mean, I always do it on the final strings anyway, but I was kind of interested to be sure before we put those on that we had the positioning of the bridge exactly right. But if we don't, then we've got to make adjustments anyway, so I ain't going to save or lose us any time. Right. And these go in the bin. You can get this one out. Just trying to think where Jim communicated with me. Was it on Gmail, or was it? Let's have a look. If it's on Gmail, then I'll be able to find think it was, no, it was on Real Life Guitars email. Right, I'm going to put a pause on this and I'm going to go and check which gauge strings, and then we'll come and get finished off. See you in a minute. Tens. It's tens what he wants is. Ow. They're in here somewhere. No, okay, tens. New pack. Can't believe I used them all up already. Not all of them, other lot. Right. Okay. So what we do first before we restring is we get that like that, right? And we get a file. Oh my god, that's right. I'm only treading on some laminate, no, some veneer, which is rubbish anyway. So you get this like this, and you go like this. And you carefully take down the excess nut material that you don't need. Being sure. Hello, fat face. Morris's new adopted brother from another mother. Yeah, basically take it down until you're kind of happy with it. Being careful not to at all ever reduce any of the slots down so that there's any chance of the string popping out and running off sideways, which is sort of a little bit difficult to do by eye because you can't always be sure. What are you doing, fat face? People who think we're being cruel calling him fat face, it's because he came to us with a massive face abscess, and we had to kind of nurse him back to health, really. At which point he sort of got a bit attached to us and then started to turn up more and more regularly for grub. That's looking alright to me. Yeah, turned up more and more regularly for food, and sort of made himself a permanent resident, especially close to the food bowls. So he became a bit of a hoover. Just absolutely eat up everything in sight. Bless him. Okay. I'm just rounding off this corner here because it's often the one that feels sharpest when you're playing, and you can do the same at this end, and then not too bad, and then also you can take off the edge here a little bit as well. Feels all right. Okay, so now we're ready to go with our new strings, and then the next stage, there's the old nut, by the way, plastic hell. We get the new strings on, and then we will be ready to stretch out and then double check the intonation. Should be all right. Fingers crossed that we had enough room to make this bridge change and move the bridge the way we did. Oh, and then once that's done, finally, we'll just do the Tremolo Setup, which is, we use the Galeazzo Frugua method, which I've done a couple of times recently, and a very simple way of setting the tremolo in floating mode to give you a predictable known range of upward bends when you bend it back against the top of the guitar, top of the body I should say. So it's quite good to have a system for doing that, because if you didn't have a system you could be sort of trial and error-ing for a long time before you get to the range of movement you want. It can seem both complex and somewhat soul destroying if you're trying to do it and you don't quite know what you're doing with it. One of the things that I've noticed is that trying to set a tremolo, whether it be a 6 screw, a 2-point or a Floyd Rose, trying to set a tremolo before you've, or without having ironed out all of the slack in the strings is a completely demoralising experience. It really won't, especially on a tremolo, on a Floyd Rose, it'll just keep going so badly out of tune that you'll kind of lose your mind trying to figure out how to get it right. Oh, look, it did that thing, see? Put them in and it pulled through further, so I can cut this bit off as well. That's when the ball doesn't go all the way through the block. Anyway, caught it just before I tightened it up. Okay, so now these should the gauge of string is heavier, but the what do you call them, nut files that I used to do the slots with were are larger than the 10 gauge anyway that we've got on here. So it shouldn't have any problems, but I'll be, as always, as I tune up and stretch the strings, I'll be listening out for any pings which tell us that the nut is gripping the strings in any way, and if it is, we'll take care of it at this stage, and not by adding graphite and stuff like that. I mean, that is obviously it's a way of lubricating the slot, and it, of course it can help, but it's a sort of remedial thing really, and it's telling you that the slots aren't smooth enough, and eventually the graphite will rub off, and when you least want it, you'll be left with you know, the tuning issues because the basic friction on the slot is still there. Anyway, so on goes all the new strings and ball 10s, and I always go about an inch past the split post when I'm doing these to keep my sort of defined, or a dependable, reliable, predictable, consistent amount of string winding on each post. Okay, so here we have the first port of call. We've got the strings on, and the first thing we want to do is bed them in by giving them a good pull. Now if your ball end here has got caught, this is the point at which it should go pop, and you suddenly got a big handful of loose string, which isn't the end of the world because you can just wind it on and there's nothing, you know, nothing lost. But you want to find that out at this stage really. Then you want to get put them into a bit tighter and get the guitar to tune first time round. Okay, so next thing you want to do is check everything over. Does it all look good? Everything's looking good, everything's in position, hurrah, yes, good. Then you get the strings and you go through each of them and stretch them as hard as you can, not around the posts but front and back like this with your fingers and thumbs, to get as much slack as you can out of them. And what you'll notice is that obviously doing this, it will detune the strings somewhat, and then you want to tune them up again and do it again. And all the time while you're tuning, you're listening for pings on the nut slots. Not that was my finger. But if you hear pings as you're tuning, then you've got friction problems on the nut slots. You also, what you want to feel while you're tuning up is you want to feel linear tuning. So as you tune, you want the tuning to be progressive and smooth, like that. Now this neck is very flat, full stop, so we can, if it doesn't play nicely, then we can also add a little bend, a little relief into the neck to give the strings some room to spin around in the middle, which is never a bad thing to do. You can have it as flat as you like, but it will feel different and you'll get fret slap quicker. We're going to need to intonate in a minute, but first of all just do a couple more stretches, one big one like this, and then we'll get into the intonating with the bridge locked down as it currently is, just to get that bit checked out where we should have those saddles. Now, as I say, I'm kind of nervous about that because having positioned the bridge with not a lot, well, there is room, but I want to be comfortably within the intonation range. I don't want it to be extreme, but we did move it forward, so we might not be choosers. Hardly any detuning. Same there. Right, now just looking at the relief on this, it's dead flat, so I'm going to add some relief into this before we go any further, because carrying on with it in this sort of, I'll get the right key, carrying on with it in that sort of state is a bit unrealistic. So to allow the strings to pull some curvature into the neck, we want to go counterclockwise a little bit and let that take effect. Is that the springs thrumming? Yeah. Plastics. You can hear quite a bit of thrum, which isn't the end of the world. Right, let's just check it again. Tiny bit of relief, only a tiny bit, but might be enough. Right, need to take care of the bit that is bugging me most, which is to check the, where's the cable gone? I want to check the intonation, and for that I'm going to need the thing called the plug, jack plug, wire, guitar cable. And in this messy place now, I can't immediately see it. So I'm going to pull down a piece of, oh no, what was that? I don't know, a piece of cobwebbed old thing. Let's see if it works anyway. It's a reserve. Okay, a bit too long for this purpose, but what the heck. Let's try it. hello. Right, tuning, treble. Okay, that's good. That's what I wanted to hear. It's flat, it's too long, which means I need to go that way. Good. Yeah, terrific. Okay, too long. That's music to my ears because it's the best option of all of them. If it had been the other way, I would have been freaked out, man. But so we want to come this way, which is perfect. Gives us back the room we needed. So that other one may have been actually out anyway. So let's start with this one first of all. Okay, now I'll use that as a start point, and I'll just push these other ones to close to where they match up with that, which is good. All of them will need retuning in a second because they're now going to be in different positions. That to that, that's about right. Let's have a look as we go through now. Still too long, is it? Where is... There it is. Thank you. Velcro can be a pain. Still too long. Let's get this right. Okay, that's good. I like it. That's actually better position than I would have expected. So it means the original one must have been wrong anyway. So that's cool. Much better. Okay. So that will then come to here, and that will come to about there, and that to about there. Let's take the opportunity to give it a couple more tugs while we're at it. Never hurts to get the last bit of slack out of there. Okay, just check them again a few more times round. Treble, treble, treble for them. Okay, I'm happy with that. Still a bit, maybe a little bit more bending. Tens, I just can't do it. Quite a thrumming in here. There's components in this guitar that are vibrating. That's the thing. It's not anything to do with frets or anything else. There's bits of this which are either they're loose or it could be the springs, but there's something in there that's just thrumming a little bit, which is makes quite an interesting sound. It's more likely to be the plate and could be the springs. It's to do with the construction of the guitar more than anything else. I'm just making sure that all of these little springs are as tight as they can be. Very low action, nicely set. Perhaps a tad up on this one here now. You can sometimes look across the strings and just pick out by eye the ones that are a little bit out of sequence, even with a curve built in, just to get that sort of last little fine-tuny thing. But we're talking minuscule little movements. Okay, that feels nice, going up over the top there, down the end there, possibly a fraction low on that side. So how does that feel? Yeah, yep, and then we're there really. Top E tuner is stiff, but it's not the kind who can really adjust. Like it. Right, let's get on to the final bit now, which is going to be the setting of the tremolo. This is always a fun thing to do, and I bought some new, oh god, where did they go? In the pile of mess. They're in here somewhere. I bought some new papers, what do they call those things? Post-it notes. I think I could be in for a bit of a... Oh no, I got them. Look at that. I knew they were there. It's just so many things waiting to be finished off. I've got to get everything finished. Right. Great little system this for setting the tremolo right into a dependable range of notes up and down. Like I said, don't do this until you've basically got the tuning stable and you've stretched out all the slack. Right. So what we're going to do is we are going to start with I'm going to get the tremolo arm, right, and we're going to put it in, and first of all what you do is you make sure all your screws are in the way they should be. You make sure that the bridge is locked down because all the trem screws at the back, the claw, are in. You want them in, and these are, I know these are already in. Then what you do, it says on here, you get this block of post-it notes, and the first thing you do is it says you put as much, what's that little ping? I think that was on the G. Hold on a second. I will just pause while I just take care of this. I need a bit of this, tiny bit of this. Do I have something else? 400. do 400, so I've got a spare bit of that kicking around. Yes, I just heard a ping, so I'm going to just do my best to take care of that before we do anything else. Now a ping is a sign of just a slight obstruction in your nut slots, and it's kind of the width of the slot needs to be just worked on a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that that tunes up. Good, I can hear it now. The tremolo is a good test. If you hear it ping when you do the tremolo, you've got some tiny bit of friction somewhere, but that's out the way. So the idea of this is you're typically supposed to put some tremolos under some papers under the back of here until it's horizontal with the body, but actually this is already horizontal with the body, so I don't need to do anything there. So what you do is you tune this to pitch. Now this is lying on its back, so we could do it standing up. Let's get that there. Actually, it's better doing it on its back. It's the same thing, and don't be fooled. It's not. We know that gravity is having an effect, but tune your G to pitch, and then what you do is you tune it. Just one note. Tune the G down to E, and then you put in as much. Put underneath at the back of the tremolo as much post-it sheets as required to get it down to E, and keep it at E. There's not a lot of room here, so it's kind of quite difficult. Right, a couple more sheets at most. Right, two, and so, and that's flat. So take one out. So what we've done is we've now tilted it forward until we're on E. Then you tune everything to pitch again, G. E. E, a D, A, with the post-it still in place, and then go through it again. Then let it out. Everything's sharp. Here's the magic. We'll take the arm out for a minute, and we go behind to the tremolo claw, and we tune the G, which is now sharp, back down to G by releasing the claw screws or undoing them and bringing them outwards. So we just do it the same amount on both sides, so you can't see it because I can't show you very easily, but I'm undoing the claw screws and bringing them further out, but every now and then I'll stop. Bonnie Tyler song. Right, we're going flat of A, we want to get down to G, so a couple more turns on either side, and let's see what the G's become now. G sharp, a few more turns. Now you should see at this point the tremolo tail end kicking up a little bit. G sharp, and what's going to happen is as we get to G, the back end of the tremolo, well, the bridge plate will be up at its correct position for the amount of backward movement that we wanted. We're almost there, about half a turn on each one. G. Right, that is our tremolo set, believe it or not. Arm in, what you'll get on the high E, you'll get half a tone, so it'll go to F, right? On the B you'll get a tone, so it'll go to C sharp. Close to. And on the G should get nearly to B flat. Well, I haven't quite got there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a tiny half a tone each again and then retune. G to A. Keep that in there. Okay. And the last bit to do, which I didn't do at the beginning, but wherever you want the tremolo arm to be, just press it down a little bit until you expose the little grub screw, and then somehow fiddlily tighten up the little grub screw if you can. Is that anywhere near? Can't really even tell when it's in, frankly, but because it's like doing something upside down, back to front in space. Is it even in? Could be. Can't really tell whether that's actually done up. I don't really like to use this version because it's a little bit tired, but how far in does it go? Hardly at all. That's a bit crap. So there's appears to be very little depth to this hex key. I don't even know what you call it. I still haven't found a word for this that means the end bit of these things that you tighten up, and it's actually a bit crap. Okay, let's just give this a chance to work. Interesting. Not quite doing what I want it to do. It's not going to pitch quite dependably. Okay, it's just touching the front of that plate, that's why. Okay, I'm going to do that off camera because I've got to finish for now. Yeah, that's the slight limitation. I can feel it just rubbing against the plate, which is going to affect its return to pitch. So it will require me to take the strings off, pull the plate up, gently scrape it back, but I will do that perhaps tomorrow morning because it's late now. But I spotted something straight away. It just wasn't working the way they normally do. These are normally absolutely bog standard and dependable, and that wasn't quite returning to pitch. So we will take care of it. With a little bit of adjustment to the front edge or the back bit of the plate, and that's just all it takes, is just that little bit of friction of it touching the plastic, rubbing against the plastic, which is what you don't want. But it's good to spot it because otherwise it would just be a ball's ache, as they say, which we don't want, especially having invested in a better block tremolo for it. Right, so that's okay. We can have a look at the grub screw in there as well. So yeah, I'm going to take this off quietly. I'll just take it off for now, but I won't do it. Or actually, I'll go off camera and then I'll see you when it's done, and we'll just finish the setup. I'll redo the tremolo float, and then we'll just make sure it works. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, just very quickly, just redid it. Thingied, scraped back this to give a little more room so there's no contact. There we go, done. Sorry for that little hiccup there, but yeah, that's what happens when you get a little bit of plastic in the way of your metal from moving, and I'll double check that. I could even do with a little bit more at this end, tiny little bit, but I'll do that off camera. But that's improved that massively. So there you go, setup or changing the bridge and on the VT series strat style Harley Benton. Beautiful thing, nice solid steel bridge now, and we can put the cover back on, but I will take this off and do a little bit more clearance, space clearance down there, just to be absolutely sure that it's got enough room. But I'm going to get something to eat now, so thanks for watching, see you soon.